CS majors, this is about as bewildering as CS majors as well. Like, so we won't go through that. Has anyone here already done some Android programming? We live by over this guy.
I just
Oh.
So here I'm going to go over some, creating a menu. If you see all your apps, usually they have a menu when you click the menu button. So this is an image of a menu for, the browser. When you're creating a menu, you want to create an XML layout. So there's one of those situations where you create a GUI, but it's not for an activity. You just create one for a menu in this case. And you have to have some menu tags and then item tags for the actual objects. In this scenario, they have two buttons. One they call New Game and one they call Help, and they give it the image of the button. And then in the following slide is the actual code to have your app created. So here's a method that you have to override is the onCreateOptions menu. What you have to do is you have to have a menu inflator, and that gives it the app's menu inflator. And then the menu inflator, you pretty much pass it the layout that you created for it, as well as the menu for the app. Android gives you the menu itself; you don't have to worry about that.
What's
and then
menu inflator?
Menu inflator is what they call it. It's pretty much links the XML layout to the actual menu. So it's telling Android that this is what you want to use when you click on menu. And then this is similar to your onClick method. It's pretty much handles what happens when a user clicks on one of the menu buttons. Like they use a similar switch case statement here. And here they have the idea of the New Game button, the Help button, and when a user clicks New Game, it starts a new game. Those are methods that they created themselves. So another thing I'd like to go over is dialogues. Like a typical, you sure you want to exit? So dialogues appear in front of the activity for a temporary amount of time. Android provides a couple APIs for you, like progress dialog, as well as alert dialog builder to create your dialogues. You can also create custom dialogues by having an XML layout for it and a dialog object. So I'll go over the code using alert dialog.builder. So what you first do is create an alert dialog builder object. So this is pretty much to build your dialog. And then the following methods are the builder methods. Set message sets the message that appears within the dialog. Set cancelable just pretty much says that the user can't ignore it by clicking away. And then they have a set positive button and a set negative button. And then, so the first thing they pass in is the text within the button, and then the handler for the click. And once you put that in, the onClick method pops up, and you pretty much just handle what you want when the user clicks the button. Same goes for the negative button. So in this case, if the user wants to quit, it finishes the activity. And then if the user clicks no, it just cancels the dialog. And then over here, after you build the dialog, they actually have an alert dialog object that you'll use to show it by calling the show method. And you just set that equal to builder.create.
Where does this code go?
This code goes pretty much wherever you want your dialog to pop up. So let's say the user clicks a quit button in this scenario. Then in your onClick method for the quit button, that's where you'll put this code. So that's where you create the dialog and as well as show it. Or you can put this before and just show the dialog within your click method. You just gotta make sure you put it in one of your onCreate method or onResume method, depending on where you're trying to show this. The progress dialog is pretty similar. They have a set of set functions that you use to build your progress dialogues. I'm not going to go over that. Here's code if you want a custom dialog. So say you already have an XML layout for it. What you first do is create a context object, and you get the application's context, and then you create a dialog object and you pass it the context that you created. And then similar to your activity, you call set content view to tell which layout you're using for your dialog. And then over here you just set the title. The code on the bottom is just handles the actual widgets within the dialog. You can do this in your own XML code. You don't have to do it in Java. Here they show it. They just show it in Java. And then to show it, you just simply put .show. And this would go the same way. If you have a method that that you click a button and you want to show a dialog, you simply create the dialog, and then in the button click method you either show it or you can just put the whole thing in the button click method.
So you'd have a .show, and then between the parentheses you'd have dialog.
No, it's dialog.show. That's the method for the dialog. Okay, sorry for the confusion. So I'm going to go over your resource folder. You want to use images and sounds to make your application pretty. So your resource folder, I already went over, goes over your layouts, but it also contains your images and your audio. You can either put your audio in your assets folder, or you can create a new folder altogether if you want to. So
The resources folder
that's
just points to the
resource
assets?
folder holds all your objects, and then
What's the difference between assets and resources then?
I'm not too exactly sure why they give you the difference.
Okay.
I just
So where do you actually put the sound file?
what I do is I create a folder in the resource folder,
Okay.
and that's where I put the sound files.
Okay.
So you can just
So I can ignore the assets?
you can ignore the assets altogether. It really depends what you're used to. You can go here, create folder, and just call it music. And then if you want, you can put all your music there, or your audio there, your button sounds.
So
And then once you, let me finish this real quick. Once you put something in your folders, it'll automatically go in your r.java file, so then you can reference to it. Can I take the question?
is the resources folder, you mentioned like cosmetic things like sounds and graphics, but is this where you would put, if you're using like a SQLite database, if you have that stored in here as well?
What I did in my app and what I've seen is you put that in your assets folder. For any databases, you put in your assets folder.
So in your resources file, that's also where you put things like the icons that you're using for
Yeah. So all your icons, any other images you want to use, all go within your. Any images goes within your drawables. Obviously all your layouts go in your layout folder. But yeah, that's how you kind of organize things. So let me go over handling audio. So there's two APIs to handle audio. There's the media player, which is what you use to handle sounds and videos that you give. So anything that you put in your folders, that's what you'll use. Audio manager manages the audio that's already in the device. You'll need a permission to actually access that. But to play audio, that you like a button sound or whatever, all you simply do is create a media player object, and then you set it equal to mediaplayer.create. You give it this as well as the reference to the actual file. So in this case, the folder name is raw, and then you put in whatever file name it is. And wherever you want to play it, you pretty much just put player.start. So if you have, let's say you're messing with a button sound, you can put the first line of code in your onCreate method, just so you can have a reference to it later. And then wherever in your onClick method for your button, you put the player.start, and that will play the sound every time your button's clicked. So that's how you do that.
What if you have music, music that you purchased online, and you wanted the media player to play a song from the music list?
So now you'll then use the Audio Manager API,
Okay.
and over there that has a series of methods that gets the audio for you,
Okay.
and stuff like that. So media player is pretty much used for the media you provide to your app. So that's pretty simple, not much to it. And then when you deal with images and animations, that can get a little tricky. So the simplest way to have an image is for static images, images that are not going to move. You simply just drag an image view to your UI layout. And then once you do that, and Eclipse will ask you what file do you want to use for this image view, and you just tell it, the name of the file you want to use. That's just for static images that's not going to move around. If you want to create animations, then you'll either use one of these two methods. You'll have to either create a class that extends view, and this is best for simple animations that require little processing power. In this scenario, the system gives you a canvas and does all the updating, so the system will redraw anytime it feels it's necessary. In the other scenario, you extend what's called a surface view, and then in this is for more complex animations. So if you have a game that you have running, you'll pretty much extend surface view. This is more complex because you, the developer, create the canvas, and you also create a method that does the drawing and tell it when to draw. This is better for more sophisticated animations because you do it within its own thread. So you don't have the UI being handled with the same thread that your animation is handled. You have a separate thread for that, so it makes your app run faster and smoother.
What if you have movie files?
Movie files,
Yeah.
for that you use the media player.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah,
considered-
media player is for video and audio.
Okay, got it.
What if you have audio that's coming in from the phone? It's not a
Okay.
file, but
Okay.
it's streaming in. How would you? Is there a way of handling that as well?
Like, what do you mean?
From the
Like,
microphone.
Yeah.
from the microphone?
Yeah, suppose it's coming in from the microphone, or it's coming in from, you made a phone call.
Okay.
You have audio coming in, you want to process it in some way, and then have the person listen to it.
Okay, I haven't looked into the API for that,
Okay.
so I can't answer that. Sorry. So let me go over how you would extend a view class. So in this scenario, all you do is implement the onDraw method for the view, and Android gives you a canvas to draw on, as I said there, and then it'll call onDraw when it's necessary. If you want Android to kind of force redraw, you call invalidate. And then in your onDraw method, you just call a series of canvas.draw. And for example, is canvas.draw bitmap, canvas.draw color, there's canvas.draw circle. I'll show you two examples of those. One in the surface view and one in the regular view. So this is the code that you'll do. So in this scenario, the animation I have is just a green ball coming from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen and going back to the top once it passes the sides of the screen. So what you do is create a bitmap for the for a green ball and a float for the changing Y. In your constructor for your view, you initialize your ball by calling bitmap factory.decode resources. And what this does is just get your app's resources, and then you also pass it reference to the image that you're going to use. And here I also set the Y variable equal to 0. And then in my onDraw method, the first thing I do is just color the canvas white. this is the canvas that Android provides for you. And on the canvas, I draw the actual green ball on the middle of the page. So I use canvas.getWidth divided by 2 for the X value. And I give it my changing Y value. And then the final thing is for a paint that I won't use in this scenario because my ball is already green. So in the if statement, I simply just change the value of Y. If it's less than the canvas height, then I just add 10. If it's equal or greater to the canvas height, then I switch it back to 0, bring it to the top of the page. And here I call invalidate, telling Android to redraw because I changed the value of the Y. So once you do this, you're pretty much in your activity. You just first you put the view in your UI layout, and then you just initiate your view, and that's pretty much it. That's all you have to do.
How often does the draw get done?
Well, since I call invalidate, it calls it every time the method is done, but it doesn't really tell you if you look at the Google sites, but it just tells you Android does it whenever it feels it's necessary. That's what it tells you, so I can't really answer exactly.
Because if we're trying to, let's say you're trying to develop a video game or something, you want to make sure an update is coming.
Well, that's why you do the next method. You extend the surface view, because right there you tell it when to draw, and then you have your own thread for that, so you can. Yeah. So that's the next example. So this is better for games or animations that really require a lot of heavy power. So when you extend your surface view, your class implements surface holder callback methods, as well as use surface holder to manage your canvas. You get the holder by calling getHolder. And to draw the canvas, similar to the other one, you just call a series of draw method, except in this scenario, you have to lock the canvas and unlock the canvas because you're dealing with a thread. And when you lock canvas, it returns the canvas for you. So I'll go over the code and walk you through that. So as you can see here, my class extends surface view, as well as implements runnable for the thread and surface holder.callback. So I create a surface holder object, as well as a boolean for running, a Y and an X. In my constructor, I get the holder, which is one of the things you needed to do by calling getHolder, and then I tell that the callback that this view uses the holder, and then I set running to false just because in the beginning I don't want anything happening, and I set X and Y equal to 0. So this is part of the running method. So this is when your thread is running. Here I set a canvas equal to null, and then I surround the following by a try-catch statement to prevent errors. But I get the canvas using holder.lockCanvas. I set the X value to the middle of the canvas. I'm doing the same green ball thing in here, just so you guys didn't catch that. And then I synchronize the holder, and here's where I do the if statement. So if Y is less than the height, then I just add 10. Otherwise, I set Y equal to 0. And then if that succeeds, and the canvas is not empty, then I unlock the canvas so it can be reused. And I create an onResume method where I set running to true. I create an onPause method where I just pause it. And then this is the doDraw method where the drawing happens. So if you saw over here, I call doDraw. So what I do here is I first set the background. This time I set it to gray by using draw RGB. I create a paint object so I can paint the circle I'm going to create whatever color I want. Here I set anti-alias to true, and I set the color to green. So here I use the canvas and I use the draw circle method. I pass it the X value, the Y value, as well as the radius and the color I want. So that's how you'll do that. And then the last three methods I call are just the surface holder.callback methods that you need to implement. The following two are not really necessary to implement unless you actually want to or you need to. But this is just to create the surface. You pretty much start the thread there. So that's how you would do if you were running a game.
How do you ensure that the update rate is constant? Like if you run this on a faster Android phone, how do you make sure that
once you start the thread, it's automatically calling running. So for example, if I were to do an app, on my on resume method, I'll call, I'll create the view, and then I'll call, in my on resume, I'll call, the resume method for this app. So that sets running to true. Once it's running set to true, then this will constantly update, and the thread will constantly call this code over and over again. And this is, in the next slide.
But it could run at different rates given different phones, no?
I assume so. But, this has its own thread, so, you're not really congesting the thread. It's just...
Yeah, but the ball, like for example here, the ball's going to move.
Yeah.
And let's say 5 years down the road, my phone's going to get up, I buy a new phone, and the phone is super fast. And if I run the app again, the ball's going to fly through the screen.
Oh, okay, I know.
So how do I make sure I control for that? Do you have to do it manually, or does Android give you a way to control the refresh rate so that the run function is only called every 30th of a second?
I'm not too sure on that exactly, because when I was reading up on it, it didn't really say.
Okay.
So what I assume is you'll have to do it manually.
Okay.
So one of the last things I'm going to go over is debugging. So unlike Java program, you can't use system.out.println. If you want a debug statement, what you have to do in Android is called log.d, and it just takes a tag, and then the following statement is just what you'll put in a normal system.out.println call. And this will show the message in the debug log that I'll show you in a second. So there's two ways to run your app and test it. You can run the emulator, which you set up in Eclipse, or you can use it on an actual device. If you want to use it on an actual device, you have to enable USB debugging as well as allow unknown sources so that your app can be installed onto your device and you can run it. But here I'm going to go over how to create. There you go. How to create an emulator for your app so you can test your app. Okay. What you'll click is the button over here that has like a little phone with an Android logo on it. So you click on that, and then there's a wizard that pops up for you, which is nice. There you go. Okay, so you simply click new, and then you have to give it a name. So let's call it phone. You have to select the API level. So depending on what API level you chose for your app, you have to make sure you run either the same or a higher API level for that. So let's go with 2.3.
So if we're using the Samsung Galaxy, what would we use?
One second, let me finish this and I'll show you where that will appear. So you have to give the SD card, a certain amount of size so you can save the app in there. The minimum is 9, so let's just go with 10. Here are different kinds of device that you can test on. So, different device styles, different DPI levels, and stuff like that. You can, click on whatever, just go with the default. And then let's just create there. And if you want to start it, just simply click start. I like scaling it just so I know the size. Let's go 7 inch. And then it starts launching. And that's what shows up. It takes a long time to load, so I'm not going to wait for that. But if you're using a device, it would you'll go to run configuration, new configuration, and it'll appear over here. If you have a device link, it'll appear right there. You simply click it, and then click run. So that's how you'll do that. This right here is the debug log. As you can see, this is my emulator running. It logs every little thing. This is the tag that you'll create, and then this is the output that it shows. I like using this. It comes real handy, especially when your application force closes. You'll see in big bright letters where your error is, and you can just read through the text to see what caused the error and where you need to go to fix it. So that's how you'll do any debugging checks on your Android app. Go back to the presentation. So that's all you really need to know when it comes to debugging and testing your application. So now there's going to be a bit complicated, especially if you thought the previous part was complicated. But that's just because you have a lot of stuff going on. So, you want to interact with your Bluetooth radio. Android provides you a set of APIs. The first one is Bluetooth adapter. That just represents the actual radio within your device. There's Bluetooth device, which represents the actual device you're trying to connect to. Bluetooth socket is like a TCP socket. This is where all the data transferring. This is what you use for all the data transferring. And Bluetooth server socket is what you use for connecting. So I'm going to go over how you would, check if your phone has a Bluetooth device, turn it on if you need to, search for devices or get the list of paired devices, and then set up a connection and then just manage the connection. And all this is done in separate threads just because it will make your app run faster, and it also makes it more confusing because threading. So first thing is, in your Android manifest, you have to call these two, one or both of these permissions. The first one is just for connecting to a paired device as well as transferring data. The second one is if you have to turn on your radio, discover any devices. So depending on what you're trying to do, if you know your device you're trying to connect to is already paired, then you just simply need this one. Otherwise, you'll need both. And then you'll also need to import the API for your project to use.
Can you connect to more than one Bluetooth?
Yeah, you can. So here's some code to get your adapter and check if there is one. So you create a Bluetooth adapter. Here I called it adapter. And you call the Bluetooth adapter method get default adapter. That gives it your Bluetooth, a reference to your Bluetooth radio. If adapter is null, that means your device doesn't have any Bluetooth radio. So, here they just cancel the activity because what can you do? The following code is check if the adapter is actually on. Here they create an intent. And this is what I was told you before is the start activity for result. In the intent, you pass it Bluetooth adapter.action request enabled. And then you call start activity for result, and then you pass it the intent as well as a request ID, which you manually put yourself. So this is what happens here is Android already has kind of like an intent for this. So you're pretty much telling your Android, hey, I want you to turn on the Bluetooth adapter, and tell me if it works or not. So that's what it returns. You need to implement the on-activity result, which I'll show you in the next slide. So in the on-activity result, you have your request code, you have the result of the activity once you run it, and then you have the intent of the activity. And here they use the switch case statement referencing the request code. So in the previous example, we're trying to request to enable the Bluetooth. the result. So we take the result code and compare it to activity result OK. So that's just telling you whether the activity succeeded in turning it on or it didn't. If it did, then what they do is they set up their little chat. This is from a Bluetooth chat program. Otherwise, it tells the user that it couldn't enable your Bluetooth and it cancels the activity. So now you have your adapter on. You want to get the devices that already have been paired with your phone or your media player. First you have to set up a set of Bluetooth devices, and then you call within your adapter, you call get bounded devices, and that gives you the set of devices that you have previously connected with. And in this scenario, all they do is if there are paired devices, it adds it to an array adapter, which will show it on a list on the screen, and they just show the user the name of the device as well as the address. That's what's going on there. So let's say your device was not paired previously, so you need to discover it first and then pair it before you can connect. So this is what they do here. You need a broadcast receiver to set up the discovering. Over here is an onReceive method that you have to implement that automatically shows up once you create this object. Here they create a string for the action. And pretty much it's telling you whether devices were found or not. So here they check if devices were found. So if yes, they get the discovered devices from the intent. And they set it equal to the Bluetooth device. And then what they simply do is just add it to the list of paired devices because you're already paired with the device. So now you pretty much either you already were paired or you discovered and paired. Now you need to connect. There's two ways to connect your device with another Bluetooth device. You can connect as a server or you can connect as a client. So if you want to connect as a server, you need to use a Bluetooth server socket, and you call listen using RFCOM with service records. It's a pretty long method. And you just pass it a name, which could be any name, and your app's UUID. What I've seen done is they hard code the UUID. There's like a generic one that they use for that. And then, to listen to requests, you accept. So you're just pretty much telling the server to accept incoming requests. And then if you don't want any more connections, you close it.
So most of the time you're going to connect your phone as a server.
Yeah, that's what I saw looking at the example to connect as a server. So here's their class that they created, their thread class for accepting as a server. So they have the Bluetooth server socket that they named server socket, and in the constructor they create a temporary one because the previous one is final, and in a try catch statement they try to get they call the listen using RFCOM with service record. They do that. If that succeeds, they simply set it equal to their final variable. And in the run method of the thread, this is where you handle the connection, and then if it works, you manage it. So in here, they create a Bluetooth socket, and if your server, you accept incoming connections. Once you accept one, you set it equal to the Bluetooth server or the Bluetooth socket, and they check for any exception. If that succeeds, then they just pretty much manage the connection using the socket, and then they close the server socket because they don't want any more connections. And then the bottom code is just to cancel your server connection if you want to. I'll go more over that method when I'm going over transferring data. So the following one is connecting as a client. you use a Bluetooth device and you get the Bluetooth socket by calling create RFCOM socket to service record, and you give it your AppView UID. And you initiate connection by calling connect. Pretty simple. There. So again, you use a thread. Here they have a Bluetooth socket and then the device you're connecting to. So here they create a temporary device. A temporary socket, sorry. And then they set the device equal to the device you're trying to connect to. And they try to get the socket from the device by calling the.
Yeah, we can see it.
That's okay.
Oh, okay. So they call the create RFCOM socket to service record method, and then if that succeeds, they set it equal to their socket variable. And then in the run method, they pretty much do similar to the other one. They cancel discovery because you don't want to discover any more or connect to any more items. You call socket.connect to connect your device to the object, to the Bluetooth device. And then if that succeeds, they manage the socket. So that's what we're going to go over next, is managing the incoming and the outgoing data. So to transfer data, it's all done within the Bluetooth socket API. They have the get input stream method and as well as a get output stream method. If you want to read and write, you simply use read byte array and write byte array to handle the data. And again, you use a dedicated thread for that. So here's the code to handle the data transfer. They have 3 objects: the Bluetooth socket that you will receive the data from, and then they have 2 objects for the incoming data and the outgoing data. So here they set the socket to the socket that was passed. They do the same thing where they set temporary input and output streams. And here they try to get the input and output stream from the socket itself. If it succeeds, then they set it equal to their final variables they created. And in the run method, here's where they do the reading in the run method. So you create a buffer, and here they create an int for the size of the buffer that they receive. So in their little loop they have here, what they do is they read the input stream, and they pass it the buffer to read from. And here it tells you the amount of bytes that's been read. And then they use a handler to send that data to your activity that you're going to manage the data for.
What if there's no data to read?
I guess that will just return 0. And then you have a check for that.
But then do you end up in the busy wait list?
What was that?
But if that's the case, do you end up in a busy wait loop that's going to...
It just keeps on going?
Yeah,
I guess you'll just keep trying to get data.
That'll kill your battery power, right?
I guess so, yeah.
Is there a blocking read kind of thing? So it blocks until there's data available? In other words, asynchronous.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. But I didn't see any of that within their examples.
Okay.
So here's the simple, if you're writing, what they just do is write a byte array to the output stream.
Will they wait until the buffer? I mean, when you say bytes equal in stream read buffer, you have 1024 in the buffer, the size of the buffer?
Yeah.
Does it read just what's in the buffer, or does it wait for the buffer to fill? That read statement. It just reads what's in the buffer?
Yeah, it just reads what's in.
And some other process is filling the buffer.
Huh?
Some other process is filling the buffer with information.
Yeah, in here you're passing it the buffer to send the information into, and then that just returns the amount of data that was put in. So
by whom?
The input stream itself.
Okay,
So
so
the
there's some
actual-
other process that's filling the
The
buffer.
Bluetooth socket is what handles
Yes.
the
Oh, okay.
buffer, the
Okay,
Bluetooth
all right.
socket.
Okay, good. All right. I see it.
So yeah, Is there any other questions? 'Cause that's pretty much the end of my slides.
What about overflow? What if the buffer isn't big enough?
Again, I didn't see that in the examples, so I can't answer that. Some of the documentation doesn't tell you every little scenario, but this is the, within reading, it just tells you how you do it. It doesn't tell you how to catch any errors. So it's things I can look into and, give you answers for. So yeah, here's my email. If you guys have any other questions I can help you with. And then if you want more help, there's a good site, thenewboston.org, that has 200 Android tutorial videos. So that can help you with some of the stuff depending on what you're trying to do. It's where I did my learning from when I first started. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions?
You mentioned the emulator briefly. How do we actually get the software on the phones?
All you do is just run the application. When you click run, let me just go over here. When you simply click this button right here, when you run, it'll automatically install your application into the emulator. So you don't have to handle that. All you
Well, no, I want to know how to get it onto my
onto your phone, the same thing. Because since you're allowing debugging, when you press start, it'll pretty much install it in a certain folder that they have for debugging, and it'll run on your phone.
You have to.
How do you get it onto the
I have experience with it. So
Okay, go ahead.
you have your phone, you have a USB cable. You plug that into your computer, and that's how, when you're using Eclipse, that's how it does the debugging. So like you said, you can run the device from Eclipse on your phone. And when you click run, it actually transfers it over USB onto your phone, and you have a little icon on your phone. It'll run
So you don't
automatically.
have to like set it up in some market or thing.
No.
No.
I mean, you'll have to turn on allow.
Yeah, it's,
I'm
allow
sure you'll have to
USB
give it some
debugging.
permissions. I just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
get it on the phone.
Yeah, but like actually running it through Eclipse transfers it on your.
I mean, and there is a setting you showed.
Yeah, there's 2 settings you need to set up in your phone. First, you need to allow USB debugging, and then allow unknown sources so that you can get phones outside of the Android market.
I can navigate from there. I just wasn't clear on.
Okay.
And in Eclipse, you needed to add the phone to your.
Yeah, you need to add your phone to your run configuration. So you need to read the phone, and then once you have that set up, you can run it. And then when you click run, you pretty much tell whether you want to use the emulator or your actual device.
Gotcha.
What's a good site for demo apps, small demo apps, so you can small examples of code that
Yeah.
you play with to get to learn?
Well, when you download the SDK, it already provides you with some demo apps. So let me get that here. If you try to create a new project, you can create right here, just create object from existing
okay.
sample, and then
Try that.
next, yeah. Let me see where they actually live. And then there's the list of examples that they have for you. So, they have a couple of games. That's the Bluetooth chat where I got most of my code from. Anything else that you want to look at, you can look at there, how to do.
There's also really simple, exercise in that the O'Reilly Make book, Make Arduino Bots and Gadgets. So a really simple, timer clock, application that they just do step by step for you, which is really, really helpful.
That's cool. Have anyone